Tonight is the big night, and while we may not have a detailed policy platform from Kamala, one that she didn't copy and paste from Joe, we'll get to that later, but thanks to the Washington Post, we do have something equally as important: Kamala's grocery list. Quote, from talking about nacho cheese Doritos as her snack of choice to washing collard greens in the bathtub, Harris is aiming to connect with voters on a more personal level, while learning that she likes to munch tortilla chips at snack time likely isn't enough on its own to sway anyone to vote for her. The small and sometimes amusing details could help Harris show she can relate to people and their concerns. The last thing I want to know about Kamala is what she's washing in her tub or buying at the store. Actually, I'd rather see the receipt for how much it cost her, thanks to her own economy and the Bidenomics she touts. But as for her private side, I don't think many people care about that either. But there is no doubt that she has a lot of sides, though. The 2019-2020 Kamala and the new and repackaged 2024 Kamala, who wants you to believe she was born yesterday, but simultaneously is the most qualified presidential candidate, maybe of all time. So what are we going to get tonight? The extreme California radical Kamala running for president in 2020, or the extreme California radical Kamala who is pretending she's not an extreme California radical as she's running for president in November?
Described Vice President Kamala Harris as a progressive. She has previously supported Medicare for all. Now she does not. She's previously supported a ban on fracking. Now she does not. These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election. My own view is slightly different. I think that in America today, there are a lot of people, rural people, working class people, who no longer believe that the United States Congress and government represents their interests, too dominated by big money interests. So I think that there is something wrong personally.
Well, at least Bernie is honest. That's more than we can say about Kamala. But join me now from the other side of the aisle is Democratic strategist Starr Hopkins. All right, Michael, I'm just going to come right out with it. How high is the bar for Kamala tonight?
I don't think the bar is actually that high. I think the Trump campaign has made the mistake of really lowering the bar and talking about, how poorly she did during the 2020 campaign, a campaign which I actually worked on. And so I think by setting the bar so low and her being introduced to so many Americans for the first time, Trump has actually set a trap for himself.
Do you think it's Donald Trump and his team that's setting the bar low for Kamala, or do you think it's the Kamala campaign and Democrat strategists such as yourself? Because over the weekend, we heard Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, as well as a handful of other Democrat pundits who were basically saying that Kamala's the underdog, that, having to grapple with Donald Trump is such an enormous task that basically all she has to do is withstand it. It feels to me like it's more the Democrat Kamala side that's wanting to set that bar pretty low. Is that accurate?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump has called her dumb. He's called her stupid. Look, certainly as Democrats, we're going to set the bar low for the debate because we know that when you set the lower expectations, she's going to rise to them. I don't think the Trump campaign can certainly say that about his performance. Look, Joe Biden's performance in the last debate, we can all agree it was bad and it ended the campaign. Donald Trump's performance was not that much better, and it got overshadowed by Joe Biden's performance. You're not going to see the same thing in the debate tonight.
Well, boy, I would hope that, Kamala could stand there and not talk about killing Medicare or, being raped by your sister. Two things that Joe Biden did say in that first debate that effectively ended a 50-year political career. So I think Donald Trump performed excellently in that debate, even, considering Joe Biden. But you brought up something that I think is really important, and I want to press you on it just a little bit. Is it at all concerning to you that the Democrat side and the Kamala campaign wants expectations for the first potential female president to be low? Like, is that not a little bit insulting to her that, like, you guys want low expectations that she can just possibly rise to?
No, I mean, Tommy, you and I both know how political campaigns work, and you lower expectations so that you overperform. Kamala Harris has been an AG, she's been a senator, she's been a vice president. This is someone who obviously is qualified, who's obviously smart and articulate, and who has been able to put together that Obama coalition. Look, it's no accident in less than 2 months, she's managed to not only put together a campaign, but bring the Democrats from almost clear disaster back to a neck and neck campaign. This is one that every vote's going to count. And so it's why I believe this is going to be less about a policy debate, less about a policy election in these last 60 days. And it's going to be about who the country thinks can actually move the country forward.
Boy, I have a lot of concerns about that. If this election is not about policy, I think we're cooked. I think it needs to be about policy. Election shouldn't be about anything other than policy. I understand that personality plays into it. I understand that charisma plays into it. But my God, if we're electing the leader of the free world, I would hope that policy would be important to the American viewers and voters. Maybe that's why that New York Times Siena poll does have Donald Trump ahead, albeit by very little. But reason being because the American people don't know enough about where Kamala stands. She's only done the one sit-down interview. She had weirdo Tim Walz next to her. She's obviously been hunkered down for a week preparing for a debate. All reports indicate that she's got Hollywood lights, that she's got stand-ins that are dressed like Donald Trump. So that's my next question for you. Do you think it's a little odd that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris need a week of hunkered down, dedicated debate prep to stand next to Donald Trump, who they've called a buffoon for 90 minutes? Doesn't that seem like quite a lot of preparation needed for a job that they're already doing?
Look, I've actually prepared candidates for presidential debates. It's a serious thing. You're getting ready to debate a former U.S. president in front of the American public. It'll probably be the biggest crowd that we've ever seen for a debate, something Donald Trump, I'm sure, will remind us of. But the stakes are serious. Look, Donald Trump has said that he's for states' rights when it comes to abortion. Well, Americans are going to find out today what that really means. And what it means is a national ban on abortion. They're going to talk about the fact that—
Does it really, though? Because that's the exact opposite. How can you say that respectfully? How can you say that a state-level abortion decision being left in the hands of the states means a national abortion ban? Those two things are actually opposite.
They're not, though. If you live in Texas and you don't have the funds to go to another state, or Texas criminalizes someone giving you a ride, someone helping you get out of the state to have an abortion, you've in effect made it a national ban. Not everyone has the funds to go from Florida to Massachusetts. We now live in a country where the last 16 states to update their abortion laws have restricted them even further. I mean, the state of Florida is looking at a 6-week ban. The country doesn't accept that. And so I think it's why when you start to hear a lot of conversations about whether she's progressive or whether she's moderate, the policies she supports are overwhelmingly supported by the American people. I've got to be honest, I think Democrats have just been not great at messaging them.
I think actually Republicans have a trickier time with messaging. But you brought up something that I do think is important. I personally think every state should put abortion on the ballot. I think that the voters in every state should decide. And I think if the voters in every state do decide, I do believe you're going to be much closer to the Democrat position on abortion. And I don't have anything really against that, because I do believe that the voters in each state should decide. But you guys have been winning on abortion, so you should want that as well. You should want the states to have their own decisions, and then we'd really see how they shake out. But it's no doubt that abortion is going to be a big issue in this election. Completely understand it. I know that the Kamala campaign is going to lean into that heavily. I don't blame you. It's a winning issue. Since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, every ballot initiative on abortion, Republicans have lost. So I understand. But beyond that and the other issues, when you do look at the polls and the American people are saying, damn, we haven't heard from Kamala, but all we've heard from Kamala is 2019 and 2020 Kamala, in her own words, talking about banning fracking, talking about the Green New Deal. Now we have this new ACLU questionnaire that has resurfaced, which I'm sure you don't want to talk about, because I wouldn't either, about Kamala supporting gender reassignment surgeries for detained illegal immigrants. I mean, my God, that's pretty far for even the most progressive Americans, don't you think?
Let me say one thing first to the question about abortion. I think the problem with having abortion on the ballot in every state is you don't want people's individual rights at the whims of a vote. And so, if today it's abortion is a state rights issue, tomorrow, are we going to go back to having potentially segregation or things like that as a state right issue? I hate using slippery slope arguments because as a lawyer, it's kind of a lazy argument. But here, that really is the big theory, or really the big fear, rather. And then in terms to flip-flopping questions, look, I think she has gotten more pragmatic. After being vice president, after serving for 3.5 years, not only has she gotten better in terms of her communication style, I think she's gotten more comfortable, but I think she's also seen what's possible. When you're running when you're an AG or you're a senator, what you think you can get done is going to be different than what you're going to do on a national stage. So using fracking as a perfect example. Look, personally, she is against fracking. She's from a clean energy state. But does she believe that the entire country should ban fracking? No. Pennsylvania is a state that a major part of their economy relies on fracking. So personally, does she believe fracking should be in place? No. But that's not personally what we believe is not always what the best national policy should be. And I think you're seeing that with things like Medicare for all. I think you're seeing it with fracking. We've got to get things done. And so there's what's possible and there's what's probable. And we've got to get back to getting what's probable done.
I don't have anything wrong with what you just said. And every time I have a Democrat on my show, the Democrat strategists, the pundits, the politicians, they explain it far better than Kamala. Problem is, Kamala can't explain it to us. She had an opportunity in that one dinky little tiny interview that she did on CNN. She had an opportunity, and the best that she could come up with is, my values haven't changed. She didn't say what you just said. She didn't say, listen, in a governing role, you have to make decisions that aren't necessarily the ideal, but it's to get things done, to move things forward, to be pragmatic. If she would have said that, perhaps she could have won some people over and they would actually know where she stands. But she hasn't told us that. And she hasn't even really necessarily told us what her positions are. Her campaign has through statements, but not necessarily Kamala herself, which kind of brings me to my next point that I have to ask you about. This is another embarrassing thing. I don't know if the Kamala campaign is stupid or lazy, but we finally get an issues tab, all right? Finally get an issues tab. And then the New Republic, which is not a conservative outlet, uncovered in the metadata that they essentially copied and pasted a lot of that issues tab from Joe Biden. So what the hell?
I mean, she was running as the VP for Joe Biden's campaign. She certainly is going to agree with a lot of the positions. Now, is she going to have to make room for the positions where she disagrees? Look at the tax rate. Joe Biden wanted to put it at, I think, 28%. She believes 25% is the better corporate tax rate. There's certainly going to be areas where she disagrees. And I actually expect tonight for her to make that case, for her to explain that where she agrees with Joe Biden, she certainly will. But she is going to be her own president. And so when you serve as vice president, you're at the whim of the person at the top of the ticket. But I agree. Look, she does have to be better with articulating that message. But this has been a campaign that she's only been at the head of the ticket for, 6 weeks, 7 weeks?
I know, but my God, with all that money and all those resources and all those people working for her, they couldn't do any better than copying, pasting from Joe's website. I mean, that's laziness at work. If you say, listen, we have similar ideas to the Joe campaign, that'd be fine. It's legit the same metadata. They copied and pasted it. Like you have to explain to me with all those people.
At least it's not ChatGPT. Come on.
I mean, it might as well have been. At least that would have been somewhat original. At least an algorithm would have put that together, but they just copied and pasted. So it's really weird to me. I don't understand how she gets herself out of this. How do you say that you're the change candidate, but you have a lot of the same policies as Joe Biden, that you literally copied and pasted from Joe Biden, but you're your own person, but you're not the person from 2019, but you're a prosecutor, but, being the vice president, you just did ribbon cutting ceremonies and you weren't in charge of the border, but now you're going to be in charge of the border. There's a lot that she's going to have to sift through. And you've got to at least acknowledge that.
Look, I do think it's always difficult when you have a vice president trying to run and they've got to find ways to separate themselves from the prior administration. But look, I always think it's ironic when you hear Republicans talk about politicians being amorphous and switching positions. You got Donald Trump, who at one point is pro-abortion, the next minute he's anti-abortion, 1 minute he's pro-China, next minute he's anti-China. I think the American public, for better or for worse, has really gotten numb to the idea of where people.
Michael, I think
Especially in this election, because there's Whoops, did I lose you?
You did, but don't worry, you're back. We just
Okay,
copied
there
and
we go.
pasted you right on over, and you're
See?
here. But listen, it's a perfect place to stop. I don't think Donald Trump has ever been pro-China. And as for the abortion thing, having an evolving position on abortion is something that a lot of Americans have an evolving position on. Same thing can be said with gay rights. A lot of Americans have an evolving position, and having a position that you had back when he was a liberal Democrat in New York is much different than having different positions than you had 3 years ago. 3 years ago. So that's confusing for a lot of people. I have to ask you about the immigration stuff. Listen, the residents in the white working class town of Springfield, Ohio, they're pretty pissed off because their small town of about 60,000 people, been saddled with 20,000 Haitian migrants and other migrants, I'm sure, mixed in there. What do the Democrats say to those people that are like, hey, listen, we're all for love and tolerance, but this is a little much?
Really challenge you guys to get out here and do something. These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They're running into... They flipping cars in the middle of the street. And I don't know how, y'all can be comfortable with this. I don't know, who's getting paid from it. I honestly feel like someone's getting paid from it in the background. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them. Who is getting paid? How much money is y'all really getting paid, to bring them over here? I know it's deeper than them. I know that's where they come from and that's what they do. That's their country. I don't know what they got going on over there, but they can't do that over here. And if y'all just getting paid from it and then y'all ain't doing nothing about it, I think that's super weird, bro. Y'all got to stand on business. Y'all got to really, step up. It's lame.
I agree. I think it's lame. Do you think it's lame?
I think we certainly got to figure out how we deal with our immigration problem here. Senator John Thune had a bill which Democrats supported, were willing to put on the floor, and Donald Trump asked them not to, or told them rather, not to do it because of political reasons. We're getting to a point now where immigration has become such a politicized issue that we're not getting anything done. It used to be we could get incremental change done. And now it's just, we've hit this point where we're all talking past each other. And so I can understand why people in communities are frustrated because there's nothing getting addressed. And so while Democrats continue to try to put up border bills, I think they put up $1.7 billion worth of cybersecurity at the border. We need a comprehensive bill. And the one we had in 2016 got shot down by Republicans. And this one, unfortunately, has gotten shot down again.
Yeah, I know that the bipartisan border bill is that triple B. I know that Kamala is going to talk about that a lot tonight. I know Democrats are going to talk about it. It's the easy thing to say is, oh, we had this bipartisan bill. Well, listen, we need to strengthen our border security. I agree. But even the best cybersecurity and hiring millions of Border Patrol agents isn't going to do jack if you still let everybody through. You still give them a court date 3 to 5 years in advance. You allow them work authorizations, or even worse, you use a CBP-1 app to just have them come up to the port of entry, or you fly them in and you put them in frickin' Springfield, Ohio. What about the ducks, Michael? Who's going to stick up for the ducks that are, apparently being decapitated?
Yeah, the Haitian immigrant story, I think, has been debunked by now. But I will say,
you're calling that man a liar?
Listen, I don't know where that guy got his facts, but it doesn't sound like it's from any reputable news source. But I do agree.
Michael, he lives in the community. When you've got community members that are at a city council meeting and they're like, hey, listen, we got Haitians throwing mattresses in our yards. We've got them hitting trash cans because they don't know how to drive. That's why our insurance rates are going up. When you've got people that are living in that community that are saying, A, B, and C are happening right before our very eyes. Do you think it's fair for Democrats and media outlets to say, well, it's not reported in the Washington Post, so these people who are living it every single day, they might not have their facts right?
No, what I think is fair is to ask Republicans to come to the table and make some actual agreements. Be willing to give a little and take a little.
We've given you $10 million. We've given you an open border. Give a little.
Marco Rubio put up a bill. Republicans wrote that bill. It was struck down by Republicans in the House. John Thune, along with Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, not exactly my favorite former Democrats, put together a bill. That bill was struck down by Republicans. This has got to be more than just Democrats being weak on immigration, as Republicans like to put it. Like, there has to be consensus on this. And so if Republicans are really serious about getting this done, let's get it done. Democrats have taken on a bill that we don't like, but it's the only way we're going to get.
Why don't you like it? Like, why? I mean this sincerely. Why do Democrats want to have millions of illegal immigrants in this country? And if you don't even want to say, oh, if you want to legalize them, okay, why do Democrats want to import a medium-sized country equivalent worth of people into the United States who a lot of them don't speak English. A lot of them, maybe they are low-skilled labor, but they're going to compete for American jobs. Why do Democrats want that so badly?
So Democrats actually want to secure the border and make sure that we have legal immigration. Our holdup is on what we do with the people that are here in this country illegally now. If you do what Donald Trump wants to do, which is deport 10 to 15 million people, that is going to crash the economy overnight. CBO, nonpartisan group.
But wait again, why would it crash? Okay, so we let these people that Joe and Kamala have let in, 10 million. We're not even talking about the ones that have been here. Let's just talk about the 10 million in the last 3.5 years. The 10 million that are here, outside of the ones that were given work authorization, the rest of them should not be able to work. So you have to tell me these people that are living in taxpayer-funded shelters and hotel rooms or camping out in parks, taking those 10 million people who are sucking off the government currently and taking them and removing them, tell me how that crashes our economy.
So $500 billion in tax money, tax revenue, comes from undocumented workers who actually do pay taxes.
The 10 million that Kamala and Joe have let in, you're telling me those 10 million are working right now? Because they're not supposed to be.
$1 trillion worth of spending power comes from undocumented immigrants.
With our money, Michael.
I'm not saying that we need to keep allowing people to come in illegally, but what is your suggestion on what to do with 10 million people who are here who contribute to the workforce? I mean, whether you and I agree or not, independent organizations have said if you deport 10 million undocumented immigrants, the economy itself will crash.
Okay, so you have to explain this to me. 3.5 years,
Yes.
10 million people let in. That's in
Yes.
3.5 years. So you're telling me that those 10 million that have come in the last 3.5 years are contributing so much to our economy. Well, then why was our economy doing swimmingly well during the Trump administration without those 10 million here?
But it wasn't. I mean, if you actually look at the numbers, the Trump economy was not this historic economy that people say it was. By the end of the Trump economy, he had lost 15 million jobs.
Because of COVID, Michael, be honest. Be honest. It's because y'all wanted to shut everything down. Y'all wanted to shut everything down and send people checks in the mail. So you can't say that Trump lost all these jobs because the COVID lockdowns and shutdowns.
1 million Americans die during COVID. And it's the Democrats who want to get blamed for that. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
Well, more Americans died during COVID during the Biden administration than the Trump administration. I mean, that's another fact that you cannot dispute with me. But I have to go back to the immigration thing because, and it's not me wanting to be a gotcha thing. It's just me wanting to really understand the Democrat position on this. I don't understand when Democrats say we can't deport 10 million people. If you can let in 10 million people in 3.5 years, by God, you can remove 10 million people in 3.5 years.
How do you plan on doing that? You're just going to round up?
How did you get them here? You let them walk in. You let them be bussed in, flown in, walk across the border. So that was all fine and dandy. But now the concept of taking those same people who are here illegally against our laws and removing them back to their country of origin, that seems like an impossibility. But letting them all stream in was fine.
I have yet to hear a plan on how you're going to deport these 10 million people or an actual acknowledgement of the fact that these low-skilled laborers, as Republicans like to call them, pick our vegetables, our fruit, clean a lot of the houses that people live in, the buildings. I mean, we act like these are people who are literally just living in tents all over the country, and that's just factually incorrect. I mean, undocumented, we talk about them like they're all criminals, like they're all scourges on society. Undocumented immigrants commit crime at a less rate than people who are born
All right,
here.
I don't want to hear that stat again. I don't want to hear that stat. And you're going to go up to somebody whose child needlessly died at the hands of an illegal immigrant, and you're going to tell them, but don't worry, though, but statistically, this was an anomaly for you.
And we could always use anecdotal evidence. I mean, I could say I knew someone who died in a car crash, so therefore we should never have cars again.
Well, Democrats are probably well on their way to that too. I mean, you want to take away the efficient cars that people can afford.
F-150. Nobody's ever taken away my truck.
Well, I mean, you better talk to Kamala about that one because she also wants electric vehicles. I understand the Democrat position on immigration is anybody, anytime, anywhere, as long as they can fill out a ballot. I understand that, but it's really bankrupting our country. And, you know, if you're telling me that these 10 million people that Kamala let in are working, we got a big problem because they're not supposed to be. A lot of them were given work authorization. They're going to take American jobs, but the rest of them that weren't given that work authorization, they shouldn't be working because that's also illegal. So we got a big problem here. And unless you're going to remove some of these people, the problem is going to exist, and President Kamala, I fear, would let 10 million more in. We simply cannot afford it. But I do want to get to some other topics that might come up tonight. And this kind of goes maybe somewhat along with her flip-flopping positions. Kamala on reparations. Let's take a listen.
In the area of reparations for descendants of Africans enslaved, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has proposed a bill to form a commission to study how to do reparations. If you elected president, would you sign that bill if it came across your desk?
When I am elected president, I will sign it.
What do you think? Just take a guess. Look in your crystal ball. Do you think Kamala still supports reparations, or has she evolved on that too?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of reparations we're talking about. I mean, there have been questions about whether it's their cash infusion reparations, whether there's investments in communities and education. The conversation around reparations is a nuanced one that I think has been lost. And so I think it depends on how the question's asked, whether or not she supports it.
I hate to tell you, but the reparations money has been given out to illegal immigrants. So I don't know. Maybe you should start tracking that money down because I don't know if there's that much of it left. But speaking of, I mean, you told me it was going to be so difficult to deport illegal immigrants. How difficult do you think it would be to start passing out checks to people based on race? I mean, how are y'all going to do that one? That might be a little challenging, don't you think?
Well, first, it's not historically it's happened before. We did it with the Japanese after the internment in World War II.
But we knew who the Japanese were that were internment camps. You're going to tell me that right now in 2024, you're going to figure out all the people that are of African-American descent or partially of African-American descent, and you're going to start dividing out checks based on the ethnicity and the race of people and based on how much they are of this and of that. I mean, that sounds like it's going to get real sticky real fast.
Well, first, we shouldn't not do something because it may be hard to figure out how to get there.
Well, exactly how I feel about deportation, Michael. We should not do something just because it's going to be challenging.
So come up with a plan, and then we can debate the plan. But right now, there isn't one. And at least with reparations, there have been conversations about how we can invest in school districts. We could give home grants because of the effect of redlining. I mean, the property that was taken away all across this country, there's been a historic inequality. I think we can all acknowledge that. And so when you look at just basic things like how much the average individual is their worth, like their actual financial worth, when they die. For white Americans, it's almost 3 times as much as African Americans when they die. That's not just because people woke up and decided they're going to be poor. It's because people start out in poor schools and end up in poor high schools and don't have the same opportunities. And so, yeah, I do think it's going to be really complicated to do reparations, but I also think we're smart enough to figure out solutions.
Well, that's how I feel about deportation, but I will tell you this. I think a great start would be maybe the opportunity zones, maybe the funding for HBCUs, both Donald Trump actions. And then also you want to talk about
John Delaney. Let me say, my former boss, John Delaney, was the first person to introduce opportunity zones. I think that's a real bipartisan area.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Donald Trump did it. And beyond that, when we're talking about schools, I mean, dang, you're kind of talking about school choice there, something that Democrats also don't like because you guys are married to those almighty teachers unions that want kids in remote learning so that teachers can work in sweatpants. But, there's a lot for us to get to. Just in closing, I have to ask you, how do you think tonight's going to shake out? Do you think we're going to get a clear winner and a clear loser, or do you think it's going to be kind of abstract like Kamala's entire campaign?
I love hearing you. I think it's going to be a Rorschach test. If you like Donald Trump, then you're going to think he was successful and kind of articulated his case. And if you're a Democrat, I think you're going to feel the same way about Kamala. I think one of the things you're really going to have to look out for is, at the end of the day, where are young people and where are women? When you look at what the scales say, what the polls say at the end of this, that's who's going to really drive this. Turnout among women, among young people, the registration in states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, it's been up over 200%. And so what they see tonight is really going to dictate whether or not they come out.
Boy, well, I guess we're going to have to see what happens. So let's see where the cookie crumbles. And I, for one, cannot wait to watch it. You better hope Kamala does a pretty good job, because I think you guys are out of candidates now. So you got to stick with the one that you have. So best of luck with her. I can't wait to see which version of her shows up tonight. I appreciate you for being a good sport and for having the conversation and the discussion with me. I really do enjoy picking your brain, and I hope you'll come back.
Hey, absolutely. Anytime. This was fun.
All right. It was a good time. I sure enjoyed it. Thanks so much. All right, folks, along those same lines, I have no idea what the debate questions will be tonight. Let's hope Kamala doesn't either. But here are a few I'd sure love to ask. It's time for Final Thoughts. The debate tonight is likely the only debate we're going to get. It's only 90 minutes long, including 2 commercial breaks and time for moderators to ask questions. So how much they'll actually get to will be limited, and that's good news for Kamala. Bad news for the American people. Here are some questions I sure hope they ask, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's start with immigration. I want to know if Kamala will deport any migrants, any at all, because we've got millions of them. And frankly speaking, even if she did shut down the border and even if she did deport the known criminal ones, we'd still have millions left sucking off the government teat. Which brings me to my next question. Does she support their right to work? Because if so, that's 10 million plus jobs not going to Americans. That's going to drive down wages for people who are already struggling to, live. And speaking of that, do illegals qualify for her supposed down payment assistance plan? What about health care? Should the American taxpayers keep covering that one too? And as for the Haitian migrants who were allegedly eating park fowl and neighborhood pets, how long will they have the temporary protected status? When will ducks and pets be safe in Ohio? What about the right to vote? Does she think illegals should vote? And if not, does she support the SAVE Act, which requires proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections? Moving on to her energy policy, and I'm not talking about vibes. Well, she says she doesn't want to ban fracking now. So does that mean fracking was never a threat to climate change, or is it still a threat and she's just cool with it now? Because we'd sure like to know. How about crime? Does she still support reclassifying felonies as misdemeanors? After all, she was one of the architects of Prop 47 in California. Where does she stand on that now? What about cashless bail? She supports red flag laws when it comes to gun control, but what about thug control? Should repeat offenders be arrested and then released to reoffend? For the social issues, her running mate made Minnesota a trans refuge state wherein minors have access to life-altering trans surgeries and hormones without parental consent. Does she want to take that one national? What about women's sports? Should men be allowed to compete against women and use their bathrooms and their locker rooms? No means no, right, Kamala? She needs to be put on the spot for all of the above and so much more, and she needs to continually be put on the spot until we get clear answers. As for Donald Trump, I could tell you where he stands on all of the above, and you might not like it. It might not make you feel nice, but at least you'd know what the actual hell you're getting yourself into. Kamala is either a liar or too incompetent to tell us, but she wants you to put her in the White House and I guess just find out which one. I can't wait to see which version of her shows up tonight. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern for the debate reaction show. I'm sure it's going to be a good one. Also, catch full episodes of this show on Fox Nation whenever you want. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.